The Mission, Chapter 6. One day, while sitting by his father's side in front of the fireplace, an elderly John Birge makes a surprise request to his son. "Come, help me up, Nathan. I want to go visit an old friend." Nathan expected his father to direct him to a nearby homestead, but instead, John Birge leads him to the Old North burying grounds, the cemetery where lies the stone house, the gravestone, of famous clockmaker inventor Joseph Ives. After a long and memorable life, Ives had recently passed away at the age of 77. There at the cemetery, Nathan finds a wooden bench, and both he and his father sit in silence across from Ives's gravestone, like a couple of old friends at a dinner table. It's in this moment that Nathan feels compelled to bring up the past, to seek the answers to the questions that have churned inside of him since he spoke with Newton Manross. "Pops, whatever happened between you and Joe Ives? You bailed him out of prison, became business partners. Then, it seems, you two parted ways." "Uncle Joe, in the years after I rescued him from that New York debtor's prison, there were great expectations in Bristol's clockmaking circles of revolutionary, super profitable new designs. But as the years passed, it all slipped away. Joe's work was too experimental, too innovative, too, unprofitable. When sales were slow, when credit was scarce, when competition was tight, Ives was the last in line to make a dime. I had faith in him, though, more than the others. I raised more investment, many times in fact, to keep funding his clock tinkering in the hopes of a breakthrough design that would make a decent profit. But Joe, he didn't see it as investments in him and his future. He saw it as leverage over him and his talents. He grew jealous of this leverage that me and these other clock investors kept over him. So instead of making clocks, Joe starts making accusations that everyone was conspiring to steal his work, his inventions. But nobody listened. So then he goes and hires lawyers to make the accusations for him. Joe's the one that spoiled our friendship, our partnership. One day, I come home to the shop to learn that Joseph Ives has filed this unpleasant lawsuit against me for the disputed use of one of his patented clock designs, and forces me to attach a large portion of our family farm, real estate, to the suit until the contest got resolved. It was thrown out of court, of course. So yes, Nathan, we parted ways. So then, why come here, Pops? Why today? Look down there, Nathan. That's fresh dirt. My old partner, my old friend, Joseph Ives, passed to his eternal life only a few months ago. And despite our differences, he was a man of the congregation, just like me. He was a man of industry, of country mechanics, of an expertise in making clocks that I always respected, even if Joe could never master the profit side of the clock business. For my whole life in clockmaking, in the boom times and the bust times, I always knew that no matter how bad things got, somewhere in Bristol, in the back shop of a barn, old Uncle Joe was tinkering away, inventing something new. Walking around town, I always felt this feeling in my soul that at any moment, Joe could deliver us something new, something special. I felt that with every sunrise rose the possibility of that new invention. Every day we were on the cusp of a strange discovery, something exciting, something meaningful. When Joseph Ives passed, that excitement passed away too for me. I'm just as old as Joe. I smell that fresh dirt and feel the pains of old age in my bones. I look around Bristol now and see lots of businessmen, lots of clocks, but no more time. So that's why I wanted to come visit this place today, Nathan. To try to remember that feeling of a sunrise, of watching Joseph Ives in his clock shop and thinking, This could be the day. This could be the clock. Aw, Pops, you got more harvests in you, you old farmer. Whatever happened to that clock you two were designing together? That clock design from Gideon Roberts that Ives hoped to rebuild. But Nathan doesn't get an answer to this question. His father, John, stays silent. Nathan presses on. Come on, Pops. Newton Manross is telling me about some secret mission that you got him involved in. Searching for a special stone specimen at the Bristol copper mine. Why didn't you tell me about it? I can help, you know? Newton Manross shouldn't be discussing such matters. And in any case, it's not your business, Nathan. Not my business? Why is Newton given knowledge of all these mysterious affairs, and I, your son, kept in the dark? If it affects our family, I should know too. Nathan, for your own good, it's not for you to know or get involved. Well, Pops, I'll have to find out on my own then. You stay far from it, Nathan. From what, Pops? Tell me, from what? Listen, Nathan. When you was young, you'd climb on my knee in front of the fireplace every evening and ask me to tell you a story. And as soon as I got started telling you a nice story about a wagon race, you'd stop me and you'd say, Nah, Pops, not that story. I want a scary story. Come on, Pops, I don't need a lecture. I'm asking about, just listen, Nathan, just listen. So one day, I told you this scary story, and maybe you still remember it. The story of the dark-haired wolf that haunted Fall Mountain. Yeah, Pops, I remember some of it. Why? Well, it's worth you hearing all of it again. So, long ago in the Westwoods, men would go hunting around the lakes and forests and the hills of Fall Mountain above the river Pequabic. And once upon a time, on a cold winter day, when snow had fallen, a clumsy hunter went chasing after a rabbit, and in his haste accidentally fell into a pit, a large hollow in the earth, just like them hoppers over by the pond. And when he picked himself up out of the snow, right there in front of him was a big wolf with sharp teeth and massive paws and dark, curly hair. What else, Pops? With a hat and a wig, too? Hey, Nathan, who's telling the story here? You or me? All right, Pops, go on. So right there, a few feet from the terrified hunter, stuck in the snow at the bottom of a pit, is this huge wolf. But it doesn't attack him. In fact, it doesn't move at all, or make a sound. To the surprise of the hunter, the wolf opens its jaws and howls at him, but it doesn't make a sound. Its jaws are moving. It's growling and howling at him, but there's no sound. So the hunter raises his rifle to defend himself, to shoot the wolf. But as soon as he makes his move, the wolf runs past him and jumps out of the pit. The hunter keeps up his rifle, aiming along the edges of the pit, thinking the wolf is coming back, but no, it's gone. And when the hunter finally climbs out of the pit and looks back down inside of it, all he sees is his own footprints in the snow. There's no tracks or paw prints from a wolf or any animal in the snow. It's as if the wolf was never there, a ghost or a dream. So the next thing that happens is the hunter goes back to the tavern where all the other hunters meet after a day in the woods. And he tells this story about falling into a pit and seeing this wolf that growls and makes no sound and runs but leaves no tracks. And all the other hunters just laugh at him and call him crazy. So the clumsy hunter gets embarrassed, and he's hungry and tired and penniless after his unsuccessful hunt, with no money to pay for dinner. So he turns towards the door to leave and go home. But right before he crosses over the threshold of the tavern door, a solitary old man that was sitting in the corner calls out to the clumsy hunter. He brings him aside, prepares for him a comfy seat by the fireplace, and buys the clumsy hunter a warm meal and a drink to quench his thirst. And this old man says that he believes the story, that he too saw the dark-haired wolf. According to legend, says the old man, the first time you see the wolf, something good will follow. There will be a fortunate event in your life. But now you will be bonded with the wolf, and you will be destined to meet the wolf 2 more times. The second time you encounter the wolf, something sad will follow. there will be an unfortunate event in your life. And your third meeting with the dark-haired wolf, as you might have feared, soon afterwards, your life will end. So upon hearing this evil omen, the clumsy hunter did the only thing that he could do to avoid the tragic fate that the wolf had destined for him. He gave up hunting and moved into the city to make clocks, never again venturing back to Fall Mountain. A true story, right, Pops? Let me guess. You were the hunter? Whoever has ears, Nathan, let them hear. Oh, I get it, Pops. So then in my case, let's see. Newton Manross is the wolf, and you're the old hunter, giving me a warning not to go back into the woods again. The woods, which are a metaphor for my curiosity about this whole matter of the secret clock. I have to say, if you just told me to stop looking, I might be inclined to disobey. But now that you've cloaked the whole affair in a scary legend with bad omens about my untimely death if I proceed, well, you're right, Pops, it's a little bit more of a deterrent. That's my boy. Now take me home. It's nearly time for my doctor-prescribed youth serum. Brandy? That's the elixir. Yes, sir. And as Nathan fetches their carriage, John Birge lingers for a few last moments at the gravestone of his old friend and whispers a few parting words. Words that once spoken, like the wolf, would become their own prophecy. Joe, old boy, if you ever did figure out how to crack open the cosmos and turn back time, now would be the opportune moment to tell me your secrets. I'll wait for a sign. Or see you soon, partner, on the other side. Joseph Ives died on a spring day in April, and nearly 2 months later, John Birge passes himself into death on a warm summer day. Nathan mourns his father's death, but the burial of John Birge did not bury the secret knowledge that John had tried to keep Nathan from knowing. Secrets that were concealed like a candle whose light is covered by a basket, hidden but never extinguished. Despite his father's warning, Nathan secretly guards his intent to seek out Newton Manross again and answer the questions that are captive in his mind. But fate had other plans for Nathan, and for Newton as well. Right at this moment, far away and south from Bristol, a mighty and momentous struggle, the Civil War, continued to devour the lands and lives of the nation. Now, here, in a place called Antietam, the Confederate Army sends forth its soldiers, marching across a great expanse of grassy hilltops and into their first incursion on Union soil. Standing against them are thousands of Union defenders, saying their final prayers in the last precious moments before the battle. And among them is Captain Newton Manross and his K Company, all of them given only 3 weeks of training and then rushed to the front lines. This day would become the bloodiest battle in American history. But right now, it had yet to begin. Everyone was alive. There was still time. A sharply dressed Captain Newton Manross pushes his way forward through rows and rows of soldiers. He pushes all the way to the front line of the thousands of Union troops amassed across a wide and hilly field. In the distance, out over there, are the flags and noise and rising dust clouds of the opposing forces. Legions of Confederate troops stretched across the horizon on the other side of the battlefield. All of these fighting men, so perfectly dressed in their uniforms, so lined up in their rows and squares, so well organized under their flags and commands. Everyone set like chess pieces upon the game board, and this perfect setup implied a sense of order. All of it gave the expectation that very soon, when everyone was ready, a trumpet would announce the beginning of the heroic battle, and combat would commence just as the generals had planned. Yet, this battle begins like all battles do, as a complete surprise, with one unexpected cannon blast. From which side? Who knows? And then immediately, a violent symphony of gunshots, shouting, and the madness of the running, forward. Captain Newton Manross makes that famous heroic movement. He draws his sword. Just like his Manross forefathers had done, just like fighters from time immemorial, like Achilles at Troy had done. And Newton charges his K Company forward. And then it happens. Newton sees something in front of him, something dark and moving very fast. And now, a heavy blow hits his shoulder, and he's shoved forcefully to the ground. A fellow soldier comes quickly to his aid and drags Newton to a fence corner. "Captain, I believe I'm bleeding inwardly." Newton was blasted in the left shoulder by shrapnel from a cannon shell, and he's hemorrhaging blood. His injuries are so egregious that his fellow soldier can look down and see Newton's beating heart inside the cavity of his wound. And there, Newton Manross lays, resting on his right elbow, his head up, leaning against a fence in a small corner of this enormous cornfield engulfed in the turbulence of violence. And it's there where he whispers, "My poor wife," and passes into death. Nathan and Adeline are sitting in their rocking chairs by their fireplace. It's late at night, and Nathan is depressed, in a cloud of sadness, thinking of all the loved ones that he's lost. And it's not only the deaths of his father and his friend Newton that torment him. There's another, more intimate loss that tears his heart. He and Addie just lost their young son, Frederick, only 1 year old, to an unknown condition. In this early era of country medicine, life beyond the womb remains so precarious. Adeline grieves too, deeply, but she also strives to uphold the brave spirit needed to raise her other 2 children, John and Nellie. Yet right now, her greatest fear is losing Nathan, not to death, but to the ghosts of the past. A husband consumed by his obsessions, by all these unfinished pursuits. "Nathan, I want you to make me a promise." "What's that, Addie?" "Promise me that you'll end this quest of yours. Our family needs you, here, with us, not off chasing shadows and secret missions. And whatever you're thinking of doing next, promise me this, that you will stay far away from the clock business." "What do you mean, Addie? What's worrying you?" "Nathan, you know that my mother died when I was a child, only 10 years old. They told me she died from sickness, but growing up I got to finding out something else, a lot closer to the truth, and it made me a whole lot angry. As the daughter of Samuel Terry, my mother was cousins with Eli Terry Jr., him being one of the few heirs to the Terry clockmaking empire in Plymouth. You see, the Terry family employed half the town at their big clock factories, but for some things, they didn't trust nobody except family. So my mother, being a cousin, would go over to Eli Jr.'s clock shop and help him from time to time. First, doing some odd jobs or decorative painting, but also some other things too. And from how I hear it, Eli Jr. starts to build some awful strange clocks. And then he starts asking my mother to help him hide all of his experimental clock parts and prototypes so his competitors can't find them. And he doesn't trust putting them in safe boxes or in a trunk under a padlock because, as he says, there's always 2 people with the key, you and the company that manufactured that padlock. Eli Jr. became paranoid. He became obsessed, you see, Nathan? And where did it all get him? Eli Terry Jr. died a young man at 40 years old, and they say he died from overwork, from the stress of the clock business. But the truth is that he died from something else, and I know it because my mother died from it too. One day, she goes down to that damned clock shop to help Eli Jr., and the next day she comes home and dies. And then 2 days later, Eli Jr. dies too. Quite a coincidence, you see? Died from what, Addie? One of them influenza outbreaks? Nah, Nathan, something else. I remember seeing her before she got buried, and it wasn't no influenza. She was only 30, young, pretty, but on her deathbed she looked 100 years older, like an old maid, as if working in Eli Jr.'s clock shop had aged her 80 years in the course of only a day. To me, it all just didn't add up. I know she really died from something that happened in Eli Jr.'s clock shop, and that he died from it too. I don't know much about the clock business back then, but I do know it was a dirty business. I don't want that for you, Nathan, and I don't want that for our family. So you promise me this, that you'll stick to your socks and underwear business, all right? No more clockmaking. I promise, Addie. No more clock business. Nathan will never forget his promise to Addie. A promise remembered, but also a promise that will be broken by circumstances beyond the pale of Nathan's control. Nathan went hunting for secrets from Bristol's past, but he never knew that these same secrets could one day come hunting for him. Here we are now, back inside the factory office of Nathan Birge. It's the end of the workday, and everything is quiet, except for a ticking clock and the whistling of a cold winter wind pushing against the window pane. Nathan Birge puts away his papers and closes up his desk, and now the weather changes outside the window pane. Snow flurries begin to swirl in circles, and a freezing chill enters the room. Nathan didn't expect a snowstorm today. He forgot his proper coat at home, so he reaches for an old jacket tucked away and nearly forgotten in the corner of his office, a buffalo hide coat from his adventures out west. He mounts his carriage and steers his horse towards home. But his usual route is quickly rendered impassable by the storm's rapid accumulation of slippery snow. So Nathan takes a different way home, a diversion, a detour. And it's here, at a crossroads, the intersection of West Street and Park Street, where something consequential happens. The snowstorm intensifies, so Nathan glances around for a covering or a barn, some temporary shelter to wait out until the blizzard passes. And it's in this moment that Nathan spots something that catches his eye. Aside from the road, a little upways on a hill, is a large canvas tent with a painted sign advertising its occupant, Dr. Munwatis. And dangling next to the sign, blowing in the wind, is a handcrafted dream catcher, a colorful, circular object made of twigs, yarn, beads, and feathers, an artifact that some believe to be a talisman of spiritual protection. The sight of it stirs in Nathan strong memories of his past life on the frontier, and he's compelled to tie up his horse and to seek refuge inside Dr. Munwatis' tent. Inside is a single space furnished in the style of a doctor's office, with simple furniture and a folding desk, behind which we find a unique character, Dr. Munwatis, a traveling physician who was born as a native tribesman of the Chippewa tribe, and then studied to be a doctor in many different medical disciplines. Munwatis was a student of the scientific and a student of the spiritual. Doctor, hello. I hope you don't mind my intrusion. You're most welcome, sir. Please, have a seat near the furnace. It's some wild weather today, isn't it? Quite the blizzard, all of a sudden. Indeed. I'm Dr. Munwatis. A pleasure. I'm Nathan Birge. How can I help you, Mr. Birge? It's a simple question. How can I help you? But in this particular moment in Nathan's life, it's a question that cuts so sharply within him that he nearly loses his composure. Nathan is overcome by a wave of emotions and memories of all the events and experiences of the past few years. And in this moment, the accumulated impact of it all hits him all at once. He lets out a deep, long breath. He lowers his guard and quiets his mind. And in doing so, Nathan begins a conversation that will change the course of his own destiny. Well, Dr. Munwatis, to be truthful, my recent malaise is not of the body, but of the mind. I feel that we are living in a world of reaping, of endings. That after this long ascent up the mountain of prosperity, we've fallen back down into this pit of misfortune. Just this year, I lost my young son. I lost my father. I lost my friend. And I fear now that I've lost my way. For so long, I've kept alive this great ambition to raise us out of that pit and back onto our feet. But now, with what's happening in my life, with this terrible war, with so many of us in this town on the brink of losing what we spent our lives building, now I feel that we're out of time. After hearing Nathan's heartfelt plea, Dr. Monwadis does the last thing you'd expect him to do. He laughs out loud, a deep and bellowing laugh, and then he offers Nathan a quite unexpected cure for his soul's ailments. Mr. Birge, forgive me, but from the looks of that buffalo hide, I sense that you're a man who has traveled in the Western Territories, or at least can appreciate the advice of a doctor like myself, who is about to prescribe you something a little different from your local physicians here. If you were one of my regular patients with a toothache or a busted knee, I might give you a few drops of syrup or one of my medicinal oils. But I'm going to prescribe to you something very special, a cure whose origin comes from the elders of my father's tribe. But it's a dangerous potion if you misuse it. Thus, before I give it to you, you have to understand how to apply the cure. So, let me first ask you a few questions. How long, Mr. Birge, have you felt that your world was in a dark place? A long time, I suppose. Maybe 2 or 3 years now. And, Mr. Birge, how long did you feel that the world was, as you describe it, ascending up the mountain of prosperity? Well, doctor, for my lifetime, and for the lifetimes of all those in Bristol who have labored to build up this town, this country, from the beginning. So, Mr. Birge, that's 2 or 3 generations, right? A period of prosperity tracing back before Bristol was this big, bustling town, to when this place was just a forest called the Westwoods. Maybe 200 years, am I correct? Yes, you are. What was the nature of that forest? Was that forest a place of prosperity too? Well, doctor, I suppose yes. It was named the Happy Hunting Grounds by the Tunxis tribesmen who hunted there. Indeed, Mr. Birge. So let's go back even further. Before the first human hunter ever arrived, what was the nature of that wilderness? I'll tell you. There was a bountiful hunt and harvest, even there, in that time, for the wolves and deer and fish and birds. But that is where our journey of prosperity ends. There are ancient stories told of a great world of snow, an endless winter that existed right here, covering these hills that we now live upon, a giant glacier. A glacier which submerged everything under an ocean of ice, a frozen world that existed thousands of years before our forefathers were even born, even before the wolves left their tracks amongst the melting snow. And so, this land was ice and darkness. For how long? Hundreds of thousands of years? From the beginning? Until one day, the great spirit of the sun grew strong enough to cast down its rays of light and melt the ice and give freedom to the first seeds of that forest, who grew tall and prospered. This, Mr. Birge, was the beginning of the prosperity that you speak of, you see? So how much power can a few years of misfortune really have over you, Mr. Birge, over your world, when you and I here just remembered together 100,000 years of prosperity that this little hill we're sitting on just experienced? You see, you, me, we are a part of that endless journey upwards. You're not out of time, Mr. Birge. Time is traveling with you. It's your companion. So here's the last part of the understanding that you must achieve before I can prescribe you your medicine. So often, I hear people of these recent times yearning for more time, lamenting the loss of their time. Yet the world I was born into, the world of my tribe, sees time in a different way. Time does not pass, my friend. It cycles. In fact, it recycles. Every season, every cycle of summer and winter is like the hands of a clock, passing over all the numbers on its face, only to arrive at the same place where the hands began, at 12 o'clock. And in that circular journey, did time really pass? There are remnants of change, memories of the past, like sand falling to the bottom of an hourglass. You perceive that time moved forward somehow, but what you miss, what you fail to consider, is that for your forefathers who passed away long ago, and likewise for the unborn, time never passed for them. Time is not their companion. It is ours. Like a dog who follows a hunter, time and us, two allies passing through a forest, connected in their pursuit, in the hunt, but traversing the same trail and walking in the same footsteps that everything else in that same place has or will traverse, from the first wolf to the factory worker, from the seedling to the church steeple. The same circular pathway, and this pathway is the true nature of time. Not passing in a line, but connected in a circle, in a spiral, traveling ever upwards. This is how my forefathers saw the world. Their eyes could see it in a way that I believe may be lost to us today. When my ancestors illustrated a story in their language, they didn't draw it in a straight line with letters. They drew all the elements of their story in a spiral format, starting from the center and spiraling outwards counterclockwise. This was how their world, how time existed for them, in an ever-expanding, overlapping circle. But that's not how they teach us to understand the world in the schools these days, is it, Mr. Birge? I remember very well, once upon a time, when I was a young student, the teacher in one of my science seminars posed this theoretical dilemma. If a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it fall, how do we know that it actually made a sound? And so the students debated the nature of human perception, of physics and reality, of knowing and deducing, but in all of the discourse, no one raised what I, having been raised in my native tribe, thought to be the obvious answer. If a tree falls in the woods, the forest hears it. And so I'll leave you with this final thought, Mr. Birge, and then we'll get to that prescription. If we look out there at the phenomenon of this snowstorm and asked ourselves how it all came to be about, a scientist will tell you about the combination of temperature and atmosphere, of water condensation and snowflake formation. But if you asked my great-great-grandfather, a man who hunted with a wolf as his companion, he would tell you something different. He would say, every time it snows, it's the memories of the ice world coming back again, recycling. That blizzard out there, it's the ghost of a glacier visiting Bristol again as it passes through its own circular journey of time. Now, think on all that as I write out your prescription. And so Dr. Manwadis goes back to his desk to write out Nathan's special cure on his paper pad. And Nathan, sitting there, doesn't quite know what to think about everything he's just been presented. But one phrase suddenly enters his mind, rising above all other thoughts quite by happenstance. It's something Chauncey Jerome related in his personal story. And although Nathan can't find a logical association, he feels the two are connected. The ghost of a glacier, like the frost on the 4th of July. Dr. Manwadis rips Nathan's prescription from his pad and delivers his final remark. Hopefully, Mr. Birge, they can translate my handwriting at the drugstore, but if not, I'll tell you now so you can repeat it. Here's your prescription. Mix some yeast and flour together with milk, add 1 egg, a dash of salt, and then heat it all together in a pan and add some maple syrup on top. You see, the best cure for a depressed Yankee is a hearty breakfast pancake. Take it every morning for 1 week, and you'll be back to your happy hunting grounds in no time. Oh, and speaking, Mr. Birge, of bad translations, that name you associate with the Westwoods, the happy hunting grounds, isn't the correct translation. You see, lots of tribal dialects are misunderstood, and the true meanings of words are often distorted or lost over time. I can tell you that what you call the Pequabic River, known by you to mean the noisy river, should actually be pronounced Pequabak, to mean stony river. And so the Tunguses didn't call this place the Happy Hunting Grounds. Their term of reference was an oral phrase, which I've heard, never written down, but spoken, and so there's no direct translation. This phrase in their tongue means not happy hunting grounds, but more closely means this: the place where the color of the light of the sun falls to protect the hunter from the darkness. So if you were to take all that and choose one phrase, one word in English that more accurately reflected the original intent of the place, it wouldn't be happy. I imagine it should be a color, the color of the sun, and thus the color yellow. So, the Westwoods were not the happy hunting grounds. They are the yellow hunting grounds. Understanding the true meaning of the native name of the Westwoods offers Nathan breathtaking clarity. It instantly aligns all these haphazard historical happenings into one consequential narrative. It dissipates the fog and commands forth one clear blue sky. Here is the conclusion. Here is the clue that Nathan has been waiting for all this time. Yellow. The color yellow, so uniquely omnipresent in Bristol's early history. The yellow stagecoach, the yellow meeting house, both of which were painted yellow, not for preference, but for purpose, for protection. But from what? To protect the hunter from the darkness. What darkness? What could it all mean? These are the burning questions. But for the first time, Nathan knows where to find the answers. The candle under the basket, the secret knowledge his father kept hidden from him. Nathan now knows where to find the stone specimen that his father was looking for. He knows where to dig. And so begins the true mission of Nathan Birge. A mission that belonged to his lost friend Newton. A mission that belonged to his father, John Birge, to Joseph Ives, to Gideon Roberts, and to a pantheon of others whose names remain obscured by the fog of time past. It is a mission that is now yours. Your mission. Find Bristol's secret clock. But first, you must find the rock.